So I was like, I need to write a book that's a page turner. You cannot put it down. You get sucked in and you're up all night.
Hey Bleeders, we are back in business, and today's guest is Carmen Rita Wong, and oh my goodness, she has a doozy of a story. It's memoir meets family mystery, and it is so freaking good. If you are anything like me, you are going to be up all night reading. That was her goal, and that is a promise. So in this episode, we are going to learn how her magnum opus finally came together after decades in the making.
Look, the book came out to 200 something pages. I wrote a lot. I wrote hundreds of more pages. But so there was a lot of excavating too of those memories that were echoing around. I had to go in there in my head and unpack a few boxes. But the boxes, man, it was clear as day once they came up. The feelings and sometimes even the colors and what I was wearing. Like the story, and here I am 4 years old being in a fur chubby that my abuela made me. I remember that coat. Oh God, I remember that coat. I remember the feeling of that coat so much and how the seams over the years started separating. I remember my little green velvet fur purse she made me. I've always loved that color. So yeah, it's flashbulb and then also just doing the work of putting yourself back there for sure.
Today, Carmen introduces us to the concept of flashbulb memories, plus shares writing and publishing wisdom that she has gleaned through publishing 5 books. So grab a pen and some paper because you're going to want to take notes on this one. There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. Welcome to The Bleeders, a podcast and support group about book writing and publishing. I'm writer and podcaster Courtney Kosak, and each week I'll bring you new conversations with authors, agents, and publishers about how to write and sell books. Today's episode is long overdue, so let's just get into it.
Hi, I'm Carmen Rita Wong, and I'm the author of Why Didn't You Tell Me? A Memoir.
So, when did you first identify as a writer?
As a child. I think I still have it, which is so wild. I wrote a little story for an English class in 4th grade, and it was about me and a killer whale. I think I had just gone to SeaWorld or something. And I wrote this little story, and then I even drew a cover of a book, and I stapled it together, and I handed that in as my assignment. And let me tell you, my mother always kept it. I always kept it. She gave it to me. I still have it to this day. And I got an A. So I was like, oh, hey, I'm a writer.
That is so cute. You were a pro.
Oh, I loved it.
Did you think it was realistic as a job?
It wasn't that so much as it wasn't allowed. So it took me 5 decades to get my hardcover because, look, I have immigrant parents. Mm-hmm. You can't do something like be a writer or an actor or anything creative or a musician. I had to be either a doctor, a lawyer, or an MBA. Mm-hmm. My brother was the MBA, and I started college in pre-med. So, I changed that major real fast, but I still had to go a roundabout way to get to where I wanted to be. It's not that I regret it. It's just that this is the way it had to be. But I'm just glad I'm there.
Yeah. What's your all-time favorite book?
I don't have one, and I get asked this whether it's even a color. If you ask me my favorite color, I can't tell you. It all depends on everything. I'm always about it depends.
You don't have to commit. Give me one. Yeah.
I'll tell you one that when I was young, I reread many times was The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh.
I read that, and I read Dune many times.
What was it about those books?
Just the protagonists, I guess. It's funny because The Count of Monte Cristo, I so am not a vengeful person. I don't even believe in revenge. The best revenge is keep your blinders on and keep going. You know what I mean? Ignore, right? So it wasn't so much that. I think it was just the whole story arc of how he was able to succeed despite everything. And in my house, we moved from Harlem to New Hampshire where, we were not treated well. I was not treated well. And the house became kind of like a little prison to me. So I totally related to him being stuck in prison. I was like, one day I shall emerge victorious.
What is your dream writing routine?
I was thinking about this question because I had a blessed writing routine for this book because the deal enabled me to be able to focus on it every day. But I have to say the best thing is to just have kind of uninterrupted writing time, just 4 hours. And that's not 4 hours of writing. That's about 3 hours of thinking, 1 hour of really writing. But I'm so productive that way.
Are you the kind of person that has to, like when you were working on your book, has to touch it every day to kind of stay in it?
Oh, yes. And I also was writing it in my head for decades. So it was there. And then I've been writing, but then I did have to go back. It was funny because when I was really in it, putting it down even for the weekends was just, and I'm not somebody who's I now really enjoy downtime. I'm a very tired person. I've led a very busy life. So I'm weekends, yes. I'm not even going to answer email, nothing. But when I was really deep in writing the book, I kind of missed it.
Yeah.
I missed it because it felt like carving marble or building clay or something. It felt kind of magical. And I swear I will just always work my life to be able to get that feeling.
Oh, that's great. So outside of this glorious book deal time, what's your real writing routine?
My real writing routine, well, I'm a solo parent to a teenager, my teenage girl, and we have 2 pups. So there's a lot on me. It's very busy. My mornings are very busy trying to, get her up and out and the dogs and errands and all that stuff. So really what my routine was doing 1 hour for email before noon. And, doing all of my household stuff in the morning. And then I would sit from about 1 till 4 or noon to 4. And that's where I would be writing. But I'm very regimented because don't forget, I come from doing broadcast and media journalism for decades. So I definitely know how to write almost like writing in a daily newspaper, sit down, get it done, and turning off social media and all that stuff and just focusing. So I don't think I'm actually the normal writer in that way.
That's such a good skill. Yeah. I'm trying to foster that a little bit more, or just carve out the space where it's no, this block is just for this. You don't have to reply to the email right now. That's okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's actually pretty hard, but you got to talk to yourself and be your hardest boss.
Yes.
And I've been, I've had my own LLC now for 15, 17 years. So I've always been my hardest boss. But even with this, it was hard because it took years to get it done. And so finally, when I'm in it and I have a deadline, I'm okay. I sat down with my calendar, blocked out the hours, did not schedule anything during that time, and, really made a point to be that's my job. That's my job. And I'm not calling in sick today. And I'm not doing this instead today. That's my job.
I love that. What's one piece of writing that makes you jealous you didn't write it?
Oh my gosh. I'm reading, or have read, which is just, sometimes you read somebody and you're just God damn it. How? How? And I posted about her. She's so sweet. K Ming Chang. It's called Gods of Want, and it's her short stories. And let me tell you, you get into these stories and I read one story and I just have to put it down because the language, you just sit there and you're master, how, where, no rules, no self-consciousness, no rules, pulling together everything from folklore to modern experiences there's just no rules. And it's just fabulous. And the language is like a freaking cashmere, but also horrifying because some of them are kind of scary. So really scary, you're wrapped in cashmere being scared. It's awesome. Just beautiful stuff that just sends your mind into another place that's just amazing because not all books have to do that. I'm not going to be able to do that. I will make you feel. I will make you feel things. I will make you see things. But I'm very based in reality when she is just magic and it's just gorgeous.
I love a wreck like that. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into your journey. This was your first book, correct?
No, it's my fifth.
Your fifth?
But it's my first hardcover and my first memoir. So I have 2 personal finance advice books and 2 novels in a series.
Okay, well, fill me in.
Oh, they were just, listen, I was in personal finance advice and broadcast and everything. From my own TV show to advice columns in a bunch of magazines. And I was on contract to all the morning shows and stuff. This was my life for a long time. And then I decided to do the novel series as kind of an exercise, which sounds a little spoiled. It's like, oh, you decided to publish some novels just for fun to see if you could do it. Yes, actually, just for fun to see if I could do it. And also, too, because I was trying to sell the memoir and people would say, your story is so complicated. It's too complicated. Maybe if you were just Latina or you were just Chinese or you were and I'm like, I just can't. So what I did is I split myself and my story into 4 characters.
What?
And then I wrote kind of like a telenovela-ish book about them. And funny enough, I got a lot of pushback still then because this was before, the tone of publishing has definitely changed in the past 5 years. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying the tone has changed. Look, I got this book out, but everyone was like, well, it's Latin, but there's no gangs or guns or
oh God,
or border, or it's too like normal, professional type of thing, full of drama, but just like everybody else.
Under like the guise of like, we don't know how to sell this or
exactly. Like, are there enough professional Latinas who would be interested in that? You gotta be kidding me, man. I mean, this is something I've dealt with my whole life. So I got a paperback, a small deal, and I was like, I don't care. I'm just gonna do this. And I had fun writing it. That was the most important thing. I just had fun writing it. And I wrote it under just Carmen Rita. Because again, I was just kind of playing around, like, let me see how it goes. And I still was, bringing home the bacon with the finance and behavioral economics and all that stuff. So that's what I did. So this is my first hardcover. It's got pictures in it and everything. I did the audiobook. It's my first big deal. Yes.
Yeah, I've been listening to you. I've been alternating, going back and forth. It's been a really fun experience. So the personal finance books, obviously you're doing that day to day. That's like your life. How did you approach writing those books?
Well, my first one actually was what launched my TV career. So I was an editor at Money Magazine, and my boss, who was the first person to give me promotions, was a Black woman who's now the godmother to my child. She really, started me going forward because, look, in media and in journalism, I was told that I could not be unbiased because I was not a white woman or white. So I ended up at Money Magazine. She came in. She was a Black woman. She was a top editor. She was a boss. And she was like, why is Carmen an assistant? Like, let's get her up here. And she gave me these promotions. And then she said, you know what? Let's do a book. You should do a book. Let's see. And at the time, we were in the same company as Warner Books. And she talked to them. And she's like, look, there's nobody of color in this personal finance advice space. Now they're everywhere, which I'm kind of sort of happy and upset about because not everybody's a real expert and they don't know what to talk about. But at the same time, if you're looking for a woman of color to give you financial advice, they're out there now. Mm-hmm. But when I started, that was not the case. And I was like, okay. So did the first book. And thankfully I had that because there were mass layoffs. This was in the big internet bust of 2000, mass layoffs at the magazine. Like half the staff was let go within a couple of months. And I had a website. I did not have money, but I put money into a website and I started sending emails
That's smart.
to as many people in television as I could and to my friends and said, put me on TV. And within a year, I had my own TV show.
Girl,
So that's how that started. And after an audition, they auditioned 120 people. And I got it. So that was crazy. But it wasn't long lasting. But then, of course, I got a book deal out of that as well. And the books did not go the way I wanted to go. I mean, I'm glad that this is a book podcast because it's good to know these things. So the first book, they wanted me to do it jointly with a columnist at the Village Voice who had a column called Generation Debt. And Anya and I actually run in similar circles these days. And they pulled out, Village Voice, her editor pulled her out to do her own book, which was great. So I said, okay, well, I have to come up with a different title for this book. Warner Books refused to allow me to change the title.
Why?
And it was her title. Now, I'm a first timer, right? And I had been told I can't do things forever and I can't lose a book deal because of a title, but I didn't feel good about it. But they didn't give me the chance to change it. And then the second book, I hated the cover. I didn't want to be on the cover. And they were like, yeah, but you're on TV. I'm like, who cares? Who cares? Like, it's about like the advice. I'll sell it. Like, don't put me on the cover. It's cheesy. And then we fought over the title again. Look, you don't have a say at all. It's all a power. It's all about how much power you have, which is why when it comes to this book, I'm telling you, I've been blessed because they gave me 2 versions of the cover. And I told them when I got the deal, I said, I have had the worst experience. Please, I'm asking you. This is my life story. Please be good to me with the cover. I sent them mood boards, blah, blah, blah. They gave me 2 versions. This one came out and I cried. I saw it and perfect. I just cried. It was so perfect. I just couldn't even, it was just amazing.
So if you're wondering what the cover of Carmen's book, Why Didn't You Tell Me, looks like, it is all red, a stunning red color, and the font for the title and her name are written in what looks like black crayon, which is very appropriate for the subject matter. And there is a photo in the center, and it is of her parents, but it is folded over the man's face. And on the fold, it says a memoir. All very apt design choices, if you ask me. So we will be back with more about Carmen's writing and publishing journey right after the break. Okay, so I was listening to you on another podcast, and I heard you say that your brother helped you crack the structure, like when you were almost like praying to him in like a moment.
My brother's ghost.
Yes. Like, help me. So what led up to that? How many drafts had you been doing? And then what led you to that point?
Oh, Courtney, many, many drafts, years of drafts, and actually a couple of agents that didn't work out. And that wasn't easy. And, just constantly being told that this is not going to work, this is not going to work. So yeah, that was about 3 solid years of that. But the thing is that I realized, I was like, okay, look, first of all, I need to find an agent who understands what I'm trying to do, understands my story, and will let me tell it the way I know it's best to tell it, right? Which is some deep shit. Like, let's make this like deep and real. And so I found a wonderful agent who's fantastic. She of course, she happens to be Latina, so she got it right away. And she sold it in 2 weeks.
Wow.
After years and 2 other agents, she sold it like this, boom, in this amazing deal.
Was it a full, or was she selling a book proposal?
Proposal. Yeah, because nonfiction, you don't need
You don't
the
have
full.
to. Yeah.
No. And they actually usually prefer you don't because they want to help you shape it and stuff. But I did it a very particular structure. I wrote it like an unfolding mystery and like a conversation with my mother's ghost. Right? So I'm saying, why didn't you tell me? And then the whole job of the book was to answer that question and figure it out. So when I got the book deal, I didn't know who my father was. Like, there was no answer. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's like people would be like, oh, it's about you finding your father. No, it's about me answering the question, Why didn't my mother tell me? And in doing so, I'm finding out who she was, who I am, and how this all happened. And it's about this country. It's a very American story. But so, yes, I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I got to crack this code. I've got to figure out. And I was on my second agent at this point with the memoir, meaning like I've had other agents, but these were the couple of agents for the memoir particularly. And I was so frustrated. And I was just like, why would anybody want to read a memoir? If they don't know you, they don't follow you, you're not a celebrity, but who cares? Right? Like, who cares?
But your story, I mean, come on.
Yeah, but also too, people are like, that's so complicated. Like, who cares? Right? So I was like, I need to write a book that's a page turner.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot put it down. You get sucked in and you're up all night. That's the kind of book that I want to write, which, considering the text messages that I got at like 2 a.m, that worked out from friends who were like, I lost sleep because of you. I wanted very much to do that, but I was sitting there in frustration, making myself like my 5th cup of coffee of the day. And my brother had passed away several months before, and he was my closest family member, my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to him every single day and we understood each other so much. And I just was like, you need to do some work. You better help me figure this out. How am I going to write this so that people actually want to pick it up? And then I just heard in my head, why didn't you tell me? Make it a question. Why didn't you tell me? Make the title a question, because what are you trying to do here? That's the thing with memoir. What I found is that once I really landed on what am I trying to do, the book came together. So each chapter is because her answering, because the stage was set, because White is right, because da-da. And then that gave me, okay, what am I addressing? These are her reasons. And that's what I did. I broke it down into that. And it worked. So it's not a memoir that's like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Very much not like that.
No, I know, because like, I mean, you're covering different periods of time, obviously, but it's so interesting. Some of the early stuff, it's like there aren't huge events. You're like really making so much out of the day-to-day that was happening. So I was very curious how you got there, because I was like, oh, she did a really good job of like making these little childhood moments like the mystery. And there were multiple mysteries that, if you want to just kind of explain, give a little premise for listeners who aren't familiar.
Yeah. So I was born uptown Manhattan, Harlem. Dominican mother, Chinese father. My mother was married off to a Chinese gangster for the family papers, right? I had my older brother first, and then we were Wongs, but they divorced when I was little. And then all of a sudden, I went from a home where I had family living in the building. I had family across the street. I had cousins everywhere. Spanish, Chinese, and Chinatown. I was in Chinatown every week. A very, very rich life, right? Culturally. She marries an Anglo-American, the second husband. And we get moved to New Hampshire, my brother and I. And New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire in the late 70s was as white as the snow on whatever the mountain is there. I blocked it out. It's painful. But also our new father required no Spanish, no Latin food, no Chinese food, especially no music that way. I mean, my mother changed the way she dressed. She changed the way we dressed. So it was like a hardcore assimilation. Now, the thing is that when you tell that, how can you get the reader to basically understand, why am I telling this story about, us getting pulled over by the police right up the street, like literally a few doors away from our new house in New Hampshire, because the neighbors said Puerto Ricans were casing the neighborhood. But putting you in those scenes, because all of us as people are made up, mostly our fears, our personalities, our everything from where we hold our shoulders like up or like down or whatever from the ages of 1 to 6, right? I also have a master's in psychology. So when I really learned that, when I was in grad school and I really learned that, I said, oh my God, my personality makes it all makes so much sense. Why, to me, even those years in New Hampshire, like that was not home. It was never home for me. But these little things that happen to you when you're a kid shape you hugely. So it seems like little things. I mean, getting pulled over to police is a big thing.
That's
but
a big thing.
Going to the grocery store for the first time, my mother in what we call rolos with big hair rollers with a scarf, I'm being stared at and snickered at. These are the things that communicate to you where you exist in that world, in this world, and in this country. So it really was about putting you in those scenes and making you feel what I was feeling. And being in the grocery store with me, with little Carmen, and seeing people snicker at her mother and seeing her mother's face and the pain in it. So that partially also answers, okay, why didn't you tell me? Well, she was told that who she was bad. Who she was lesser than. We were told that. I was told that too. These things made up who we are and why we do the things we do.
How did you excavate some of those early childhood memories of like the cop thing or other microaggressions, or just like some of the early stuff is just you feeling out of place at home and stuff like that? How did you kind of like bring back those memories?
Those memories live with me. They are alive. They're all the time. Those are technically what they're called flashbulb memories. They're memories from our youth that really is as if you just took a picture. And not just a picture of your surroundings, but a picture of how you were feeling in that moment. Those kind of memories I've always kept with me because they echo. So they were always like kind of like echoing in my head. And it did take some thinking to bring some of them to the forefront enough to be able to write where I'm in it. So that happened. And frankly, like, look, the book came out to like, 200 something pages. I wrote like a lot. I wrote hundreds of more pages. But so there was a lot of like excavating too of those memories that were echoing around. I had to go in there in my head and like unpack a few boxes. But the boxes, man, it was clear as day once they came up. The feelings and sometimes even the colors and what I was wearing. Like the story, and here I am 4 years old being in a fur chubby that my abuela made me. I remember that coat. Oh God, I remember that coat. I remember the feeling of that coat so much and how the seams over the years started like separating. I remember my little green velvet fur purse she made me. I've always loved that color. So yeah, it's flashbulb and then also just doing the work of putting yourself back there for sure.
So the research part of it. And I guess for you, part of that was like solving the mystery. So how did you approach that stuff and the like, did you fact check your memories with family members and how did that work? No?
No. Because here's the thing, there's no fact checking.
Right.
Your memories. You can fact check maybe where you were location wise, what time of day it was or what day it was or what year it was. You cannot fact check your memory because even your siblings have grown up in a different house than you. Your siblings know different parents than you, even though you were raised with the same parents. Because think about it. My brother was 6 years older. We were both born in Harlem between, Latinas and Chinese. We go to New Hampshire. My sisters are then born 5 years after me, all in ducks in a row in New Hampshire without that family, without those cultural connections. Then, my stepfather and my mother, their marriage starts dissolving. They were all born in different times. Financially, things would change year to year. So in some ways, we've all grown up in a different family. My brother was the one, though, that when I was searching for, who my real father was, he was the one helping me dig and kind of like fact check, quote unquote, or try to follow detective wise some cousins and stuff. We went down to go to Miami to see his godmother who was close with my mother and ask her. I went to Santo Domingo with my daughter to ask, my godmother. We did some of that. And then sitting at the computer and looking up, I think it was an optometrist on Mulberry Street and blah, 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 and who might have worked there. And then I hired genealogists. That did not turn into anything. That was a lot of money that didn't go anywhere. But that was the kind of fact checking. I definitely made a point to make sure to remember time and place. That was important to me. So, for example, when I mentioned like all the shows I was watching, I just made sure that like I was in the right time period, as opposed to. So I just did stuff like that. But that was the extent of like the fact checking, because to me, memoir, the best memoirs, I love the memoirs that are not. And then I went here on this date, and then I went here on this date. And It's not about the fact checking. It's about the story of your life, the story of who you are that can connect to all of our stories. That's the most important thing.
Totally. I interviewed Bessie Ickby like a month ago or whatever. And she was like, yeah, it's like your emotional memory. You can't, sometimes the facts are like kind of irrelevant to that situation, or like you'll find out it happened you were in a different grade, but it doesn't change the like feeling of it.
Exactly. And I think that that's one of the things that I remember back in maybe the 2000s. There was this very successful kind of journalist who did a memoir, and it was all about fact checking his life. And he went back and fact checked his life. And I just was like, I don't want to read that. I mean, brilliant for him, right? But I think that there was this idea of research, and I do have to say, since you are a woman, I'm going to say this, that is a very masculine tendency. No, it really is, because I just did an event, a corporate event, where I spoke to their affinity group, their Black affinity group, right? I'm Afro-Latina, so we spoke to the Black affinity group during Hispanic Heritage Month. And of course, it was a guy who was like, so what kind of research did you did? How do you know that you were, you had the right dates and the right times and blah? And I was just like, what? Like, what? So, but I do feel like that is a very masculine tendency. I think that we are socialized a bit more to, our memories are about how we felt. And I think, and I'm generalizing, of course, but that ability to tap into that, I think, is a really great gift, because that's what unites us. If your stories about you being here at this time and here at this time, guess what? None of us were there.
Yeah.
So how is that supposed to connect with me?
And it's meaningless, like just the time, or
That's not a story. That's not a story.
Did you worry about any of the sensitivities? But I guess, well, like some people had passed, so.
Yeah. Courtney, the ones who remain, here's the thing. I definitely grappled with that, right? My sisters are around. My stepfather's still around. Papi Wong passed away in June, but he wasn't going to read it anyway. And I wasn't going to tell him about it. And he doesn't use social media or nothing. So of course not. But my mother was gone and my brother was gone. But it wouldn't have been for him. He was my biggest cheerleader. He would have loved to have read it. But I think that for my family is probably very painful. So, their choice to not read it and not engage with it is fine. But I've had cousins come out of the woodwork.
Oh.
Who I haven't talked to or seen since I was a little kid, uptown kid, playing with them, in the street or whatever, like dancing. And they love it. And they're reading it and they're just loving it. They're like, oh my God, you sent me back. And and
sorry, we said you sound white, but.
Well, and we always wanted to know why, and how it happened. And of course, with that whole thing about like teasing me about, oh my God, you sound white. Like, why you sound so white? Why you dressed like that? Da, da, da. They get it now. Because what happened was we moved away and it was like, what happened to my cousins? Oh, they moved to New Hampshire. Like, why? I don't know. And they had no idea of like, as kids, like, how does that change you? And why does that change? Because that world was completely foreign to them. It was foreign to us. We might as well have been dropped off on Mars. But explained to my cousins, you know, they were like, now we know what happened and how it went. And then, of course, I've had some be like, oh, my mother has some stories. You got to come over and listen to these stories. So I've learned some new stuff, which is like incredible.
That's awesome. Were you working on the book when at the end of one of the chapters, Pepe Wong handed a paper to you that you were actively working on the book? Did you feel like that was a present to help you? Or did you already know all that information?
No, I didn't. I ended up finding out, one of my sisters gave me a couple boxes where I found that photo, which opens the prologue, right? I had already been writing a memoir before I even got that photo. And then I got the photo and I was like, oh my God. So things have been coming at me. And then Papi Wong, he knew he was dying. He had cancer for many years. And he was cleaning out his little apartment. And then he's like, you know, take this, don't take that. Don't take that one. You know, and I'm like, why? And he's like, okay, fine, take it. And it's his paperwork from his arrest for trafficking heroin. I didn't know it was heroin. I knew he went to jail, but I didn't know what exactly he was doing and up to. And you know what? He kind of was probably like, I'm dying. What the hell? You know, like, who cares? And for me, I got kind of a treasure trove of stuff. For some reason, he had like paperwork of my Dominican grandmother coming in. I got paperwork from my mother's brother from another family. My grandfather had a couple families, as one does in the República Dominicana. In those days, her brother, she told me he had died in a surfing accident. He had hung himself. And I have the paperwork about the crime scene, and then crime scene wasn't a crime, but you know what I mean, about the scene and his death certificate and all that. So I just discovered a lot of stuff in old papers. All of you with parents, go get those papers. Get your hands on those old papers. Have them willed to you. They are a treasure trove.
So even some of the research was like just happening to you. It wasn't necessarily like you on a stakeout or like going to the library for the information. It was like kind of just happening to you as you were writing the book.
Partially. So writers and authors are going to love this one. So I hand in the book, right? The first draft right before my birthday last year. And I was like, okay, now I can just like relax for a minute, right? And the book ended, it wasn't about me. It wasn't all about, oh, I got to find him. That wasn't the point of the book, right? And my editor and publisher were very, very fine with that. I mean, shout out to Maralika. Maralika she's Indian British American. So she also really got my story. She knows what it's like. And she came from broadcast. So she snatched it up right away. But she was like, that's not what the story's about. So it's okay I didn't find him. And then I had resigned myself after 2 years of searching after genealogists. I mean, it became like a part-time, full-time job. Nothing. Because all I could find was third cousins, and they weren't able to trace it back. I'm sitting 2 weeks after I handed in the book, and I refreshed my DNA sites, 23andMe and Ancestry. I just hit refresh, and I had hit refresh every day for a year plus. And then I went to like once a week. And then once I wrote the book, I just stopped. So it probably had been like 2 months. I hit refresh. Boop.
Oh.
There's my niece. Just there you go. There you go. So of course, I'm like, oh my God. So I emailed, I DM through the site this lovely girl, and I'm like, honey, I think your mom's my sister, and thank God. I was ready for, I don't want to talk to you. I was ready for silence. I was ready for, I don't want to talk to you. She doesn't want to talk to you. I was ready. And I got a message the next day from my sister.
That's beautiful.
And I called up Maralico, my editor, and I was like, so we're going to have to add an epilogue. And I wrote the epilogue after I met her. I met up with her and I saw pictures of him and I heard the stories, and then a memory came up. A memory came up, and it was like, oh my God, I've met him.
How much is it? Just the epilogue that changed? Because I feel like
Just the epilogue.
Isn't she a little earlier or no?
Nope. Like, that's how recent everything is and
That's
has
insane.
been. Oh yeah. But there goes the universe for you.
Is there like a whole nother book now, or it didn't change that much?
Oh gosh, Courtney, darling, the next one's going to be a novel. I'm sorry. This was a feat for me. This was, don't forget also my brother passed away, and then the day after his service, we locked down for COVID. And then my daughter got long COVID, which she's had for 2 years. Then, find my father. Then my own father passes away. And then I have to call the person that my mother said was my father and tell him he's not, and tell him I found the real one. And enough. Like, I love this. This is my magnum opus, people. This is it. However, yes, a novel for sure, because I've got stories up the wazoo, and I have a novel and a half already written, but I think I'm going in a different direction. But I'm excited for it. I'm in research now.
So how does your process differ when you're writing, like when you were working on this or doing, nonfiction about finance versus a novel? Like, is your process different for all those things?
Oh my gosh. My internal process is completely different. Look, I couldn't have done this without 15 years of weekly therapy, which is what I've had. Like, that's how, it took a tremendous amount of internal work to write this. So it basically took all of my faculties, writing, storytelling, my own, emotional health, all those sort of things together. But how I approached it, like I mentioned, like being my own boss, blocking out the time, I followed the same structure that I had for my novels, which is the same structure I had for my personal finance books, which was you break it down in the calendar, how many months you have to hand it in. You always, of course, the hand-in date, you always pull that back 2 weeks and you make the due date 2 weeks before that. And then you plot out how many words, how many pages, when can you write realistically, and then you block it out in your calendar day by day by day by day for 9 months. I think it was 8. I had 8. And that's what I did. I said, I got to do 10 pages a week. And that doesn't sound, either that sounds like a lot to you or it sounds like a little. It depends on who you are, but I could sit down and write 8 pages in an hour and a half. But what it takes for you to sit down and do that can take days.
Yeah.
Days of processing and thinking. And then you'll write, I don't know, paragraph, 2 paragraphs, and then you'll have to put it down because my daughter needs dinner, So you just keep going. But that's what I did. And without that structure, I don't know how I would have done it. So like right now, I'm researching the novel. Now I'm in the research phase and I block out 2 hours every day. What am I researching today? Blah, blah, blah. And then what date I want the outline to start. And it's like a little business.
Yeah.
I know it's not very romantic. I'm not like one of those like, and then I sit down and smoke a cigar and have some rum and and type,
I've been doing this thing. It's this website. It's called 750words.com.
Ooh.
And it's so simple. It's just really basic. You can't even format anything. You can just type in the space.
Oh,
it'll
wow.
count your words. And if you get 750, it'll give you a check mark. And the whole thing is like, if you're competitive with yourself, you like don't want to lose your streak.
I am, girl. See, it's very useful as a writer to be competitive with yourself. And to be, if you like playing games and winning, that really helps as a writer. I'm like, God damn it.
Totally. That helps me stay in, even though I'm working on a memoir right now too. But even if I'm not doing that, even if I'm, it's an off day and I'm allowing myself to I did a newsletter and then I'm in a diary or something, it just kind of keeps me in the looseness of it. Like sitting
Yeah.
down to write is not a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think the regimented thing is just so helpful.
It's helpful for me. Once I do that and I have the structure in place, it just kind of, and then it happens. It happens. And it's a first draft. You got to sit yourself down. That's the other thing is I had to psychologically sit myself down. And I was like, to me, this was probably the most important thing I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And I've hosted a TV show. Like, I mean, but this book was the most important thing. And that could some days had me in like freeze mode.
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything. All I did was churn in my head. And I was like, I can't do anything so good. I stink. I can't. This is, I must be Michelangelo or nothing at all. And then I'd have to sit myself down and be like, God damn it, girl, you're going to write those words.
Mm-hmm.
It can be absolute crap. You just better sit down and start writing. And then once you just start writing, it starts. And then something would get unlocked. And next thing you know, you're like, and you just keep going and you've got pages.
Like, oh yeah, I like this.
Yeah, love it.
Anything else that you learned about your process over the course of all your books? Like anything else that you're like, I need this to succeed? And how many drafts do you usually do?
Oh gosh. Amazingly enough, because I had been writing and working on this book, so it's a total of 5 years from the first proposal to publish date.
Oh,
5 years. Yeah. So it was a long time. Many, many, many drafts. If you're working on like something like at that level, that makes total sense. However, for my advice books and such, I was writing advice columns for magazines. Like I knew exactly what I was doing.
Right.
I had been a magazine editor. Like that, that to me was easy.
Like you write them and they're kind of done. Like you might
Done.
do a pass and punch up, but
yeah. And once in a while you'll talk with the editor and he'll be like, or she'll be like, oh, we want to have this in there, or make sure you say that, whatever. But with this one, with my editor, with Madalika, she was magical. She was very good about being like, remember your mission. Does this story, she would highlight it and be like, does this address the mission? It's a great scene.
uh-huh.
But does it do what you want it to do? And that really helped me. They say, kill your babies. That really helped me to do that. And I did also hire a dear friend to be my first reader because I was a little insecure about my own, like this being so personal, and I needed it to be the best thing that I could do. And I knew, even though she was a friend and she was also former magazine editor from our Time Inc. days, I knew she'd tell me the truth. And she was also a woman of color from New York City. Like she just got it in my generation. And I was like, please just read this. And I'd give her a chapter. She would go through and she would just top note it.
Mm.
This is great. The language is great. And she was really good about encouraging, because I think really great editors are wonderful about making sure you have that positive sandwich.
Right.
Like positive, 3 positives for every 1 negative sort of thing. Because that's what keeps you going as a writer, right? You're already self-flagellating.
Yeah.
You don't need really somebody else to tell you that was stupid. So she was great. She kept me on course. And she was also another person that I felt like was watching and waiting. So that also kept me on schedule. And that helped me to I put it all together after she had done the first read of each chapter. And then that's what I sent, as a first draft. But it was in pretty good shape.
So by the time you sent the whole, like the full to your publisher or editor over there, like the next editing pass was not like a heavy lift.
It was not a heavy lift. I did send her, let me correct myself. I did send Madalika chunks of chapters. I didn't send her the whole manuscript, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, she did want to see the first couple of chapters just so that we knew that, like, we're on the right track.
Yeah.
After I got probably about halfway through, she was like, just give me the rest. Then the epilogue, of course, after. But it was a couple of rounds. It was a couple rounds of edits, but nothing very dramatic. Mostly it was, the hardest one was when she came back and she was like, girl, you wrote 100,000 words. You handed me 100,000 words. I need 70. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, can't you, like, it's really good. And she's like, look, honey, if we do that, we got to change the way the book is made. Also, because I have 8 pages of pictures in there, then it's a different cost level. It's a business decision. And she's like, also, too, with sales, it's a memoir. Like, we can't give them, freaking, what's his name? Like the Robert Moses memoir. But yeah, that was the hardest. But again, all I kept saying to myself was, what serves? Why didn't you tell me?
Like, what's on the spine of this story?
Does this serve that?
Yeah.
And also, too, to be careful, to be very balanced in my depiction of my mother and my parents, all of them, right? To not villainize them.
I thought you really were.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because that was one thing that I really worked as Madalika on, because I was just like, you don't want to write a memoir, even if you come from abusive parents and lots of trauma. It just, answering the question of why didn't you tell me wasn't about what she did to me. It wasn't. Meaning that's not the whole story. Mm-hmm. So the whole story can't be, even though I have many, many memories of horrible scenes, I had to include only the stuff that really addressed why I turned out the way I did, or why I made choices later in life, or my role with my sisters, for example, like the birthday party or the birthday cake scene where she smashed the birthday cake we made her on the floor and made us clean it up. Those kind of things is, how do we balance that she was not the best mom with the fact that she was a human being who came from incredible trauma and was doing probably the best she could.
I think that's what you get, which is fair. It's like these things don't just come out of nowhere. Like there's like a reason why those qualities get passed down, and what, like it's like a whole, that's the story.
Yeah. And you can't, there's lots of talk about generational trauma, thank God, finally, and epigenetics, but like you can't break these cycles without understanding where they came from.
Yes.
And so for me, it wasn't about saying, look at me, I came from this terrible background, my mother was so evil and blah, 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 blah. No, it was really like, you know what? Here's where she came from. Here's what happened. She was suffocating and dying in New Hampshire. Like she took it out on all of us. She resented the hell out of me and my life and my freedoms. She treated my brother differently, all this sort of stuff. But it all speaks to why she did what she did. Mm-hmm.
Hey Bleeders, I want to give you 2 quick updates about why I have been MIA on this feed for the past couple months. I have missed you very much, but I needed a little time to sort a couple things out. So first, I launched a new podcast. It is a brand new podcast based on my existing newsletter called Podcast Bestie. So if you are interested in starting a podcast of your own, make sure to check that out. It is teeming with helpful information for podcasters, especially indie podcasters. And you just search Podcast Bestie wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can subscribe on Substack. It is podcastbestie.substack.com/welcome. And I actually got an agent. Yes, and there are some exciting developments on that front that I am going to share with you in the next episode. But my new agent did mention that I have a solid platform, and my former self can't fucking believe it. So I am someone who used to shudder at the thought of building a platform, and it made me just feel really self-conscious about my future prospects. Anyway, I figured it out somehow, some way. So I am teaching an upcoming workshop all about how to develop a platform for writers who may also wince when they hear that word. And it's through Chill Subs and Write or Die magazine. If you remember my conversation with Kaylee Brennan Della Russo, that is her baby. And I am so excited to collab with her on this. So the workshop is on July 22nd, and it is only $50. I'm going to give a lecture, and then I am hoping there's going to be plenty of time to workshop your own individual situations. So if you want to join in on the fun and take your platform to the next level, there is a link in the episode description. And now back to my conversation with Carmen. So on the publishing end of things and the agent end, this is not your only experience. So I guess kind of broadly, like, what have you learned about those processes? Getting an agent, maintaining that relationship, and working with a publisher that might be helpful for listeners.
So I think getting an agent, just like getting a job, a lot of it depends on where you're at. in life and how much experience you have. Because agents, getting one to actually read it and getting to actually give you feedback, a lot of that, just like everything else, yes, it's your hard work, but it's also who can connect you to this person. I got my first couple of agents because I was at the magazine and the company owned both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I got my other agent because I was on TV and that firm had a relationship with the book agent firm, the firm that represented me on television. So I was in the business, so to speak. But when I realized that I needed an agent who fit what I wanted out of this business, period, and life, right? If you look at my bio and my resume, I mean, I am just like, this is a guy's phrase, but like balls to the wall. Like I shoot for the goddamn stars and I will get it. Like that's how I've always been, is very much nothing, I'm a freight train. So I had to be with someone who understood that. But then I realized there was another piece missing. I had to be with someone who understood what I was trying to do and my life as someone of color, which for some people was difficult. For some people, it was very difficult to read about the racism I experienced when we moved to New Hampshire. And some of them read it as I was being angry or I was being bitter. Well, of course I'm fucking angry. Jesus Christ. But guess what? Women of color who read it, or people of color in general who read it, are just like, how were you not more angry? Like they didn't see anger at all. So it's all that point of view. You don't necessarily need to have someone who completely replicates you, but you have to have somebody who understands you. So that was the second part that I had to figure out. And then I asked my friends who I admired and who got me, who their agent was. And that's how I got to who I have now. But it is a process. And one of the things is that I feel it is unfortunately a little bit of a power thing, right? It's like when you haven't had a book out, when you don't have a lot of people following, when you don't have a lot of, you kind of go with who you've got. Keep going, keep writing, keep living, keep working, keep building yourself. And if it doesn't work out, then you will be in a different position to approach someone else. So I just kept going. And look, I wrote those novels just to because I was frustrated. I was churning and I was like, I just need to get this out somehow. But it took years.
So you're working on this new novel now, right?
Yeah.
Is it kind of a nebulous thing, or do you know exactly which one you're like going with?
I kind of do. And it's so funny because I just had a meeting with my my film agent, my adaptation agent, who I just love to pieces. And I'm just like, girl, I haven't made you any money yet. She's like, oh, you will. Oh, you will. Because she's like, you don't stop. Because we got really close with the novel series to selling to a major network and it fell through, but that was fine. But we'll get there. But I told her, of course, every agent, frankly, right now, I mean, we're women, right? You're like, oh, what sells, right? And they're like, romance. I'm like, people, I am twice divorced and was in the closet until my 40s. Like, I am not the person to write romance. I'm not there, people. But
maybe that's the romance we need.
Grumpy mama romance. I mean, actually, look, once I get out there, I'm just saying, it's going to be interesting. I'm waiting till this virus is over. But here's the thing that we agree on, that do not go after what is popular at the moment, unless you want to. I do believe the thing, look, it's a business. If you want to write to the industry, like I so admire, and you're going to laugh, Jackie Collins.
Same.
I admired her so much. And when I wrote those novels, that's what I was thinking. I was like, man, I'm going to write this like Jackie Collins, man. I didn't even read her books. I never even read her books. But what I loved was she just kept pumping them out.
She's a hustler.
She was a hustler. She was unapologetic about what she was doing. And of course, the other one who we all probably admire, who I definitely have always admired, is Stephen King.
Yeah.
So I told her, I was like, look, you ain't gonna get romance from me. My dark side is, well, first of all, I was a huge sci-fi fan, huge Murakami fan, like very much magical, supernatural, sci-fi, anything that's like another level, but also grounded. So the next one is a cultural thriller, supernatural horror.
Hey, maybe Jordan Peele directs it.
Well, that's the other thing, man. When I see something, I'm like, see, that's the way my mind works. And those are the books I love. And you know who I love, who is really inspiring to me, which was inspiring to him, was Ira Levin.
Oh, I don't know Ira Levin.
When I saw Rosemary's Baby, he wrote Rosemary's Baby and Stepford
I love
Wives.
Rosemary's Baby.
And it's very New York, right? And when I was young and I saw Rosemary's Baby at my abuela's apartment during one visit, and it was like on Pix, like Channel 11, whatever. New Yorkers will remember that. And I was just like, what is this? And my mind was blown. And then I was like, it's based on a novel. I read all Ira Levin. I love that. And I decided, like, if I really do a serious novel, it's going to be like that. It's going to be some kind of psychological horror and cultural horror, because Rosemary's Baby was about being a woman and about reproductive organs and about power and about, so that's, stay tuned.
I love that. I'm excited. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any bucket list writing goals, or was this kind of it?
Oh, hon, this was, like I said, magnum opus over here.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing as satisfying. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, this has been amazing. I have a couple wrap-up questions,
Sure.
but is there anything else you want to say about the book, or?
Oh my goodness. Here's what I'll say. Some of the best advice I'd love to share about books. First, write what only you can write, which really will make it special. And the other is, the books become successful when it's very specific. Again, a book that only you can write, but it's full of universal.
Yes.
And so my book is, yes, Dominican and Chinese and this and that and the other thing, and whiteness and America and all that. It's a basic American story, coming of age American story about my mom, mysteries, family mysteries. But it really just is about being a human being and all that comes with it.
Amen. What's one piece of writing advice you wish you could give your former self?
Well, now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, don't stress so much, mama. It's going to be fine. That's it.
Yeah. One tip for writers trying to get a book published.
Keep going at it. One thing I'm known for, and the reason why I'm talking to you right now, Courtney, is because I just did not stop. I am relentless. You just keep going. And it's about shooting for where you are at that time. So please do not think you're just going to get a deal like right away and you're like 5 years out of school. Maybe you can. Don't let anybody say you can't, but just adjust to where you're at and just keep pushing. Always push.
That's good advice. Your all-time favorite piece of your own writing?
This book. Why didn't you tell me? A memoir from Crown Penguin Random House. Like,
beautiful. And how can listeners connect with you online?
I'm mostly on Instagram at Carmen Rita Wong. DM me. I love hearing what people think about the book. I love it so much, because when you birth a baby, it's always nice when people are like, oh my God, so cute, or oh my God, what happened to her? I love hearing all of it through my website at carmenritawong.com if you want to find out more about me or see me in my talks, my many talks, or in my former life. It's there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
That is it for this edition of The Bleeders. If you missed the last episode with Marina Stevenson, make sure to go back and check it out. It offers some very helpful guidance and much needed reassurance for querying writers. Here is a little preview of that conversation.
The thing that's helped me the most is just looking for the joy in it, because writing and publishing is just really hard no matter which route you go, and querying can really easily suck the joy out of it. So the book that I ended up signing with was one that I just had the most fun with. I just put everything that I loved into it. And I'm not saying that that's what did it, but it certainly meant that I had a lot more fun with it and that I believed in it a lot more when I was going out.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Bleeders. Writing is so much better with friends. I am so glad to be back. I'm your host, Courtney Kosak, and hey, let's connect on social media. I am at Courtney Kosak, that is KoCak, on Twitter and Instagram. And make sure you're signed up for the Bleeders Companion Substack for all the newsletter exclusives. There is a link in the episode description for that. Otherwise, you can just go to thebleeders.substack.com/welcome. And join me again next week for another all-new episode. In the meantime, happy bleeding!